Hello and welcome to the NBA Minutes to Win It podcast. I'm Big Italy 42. He's Jason Gilbo at JGilbo11, talking about tonight's 10-game slate. Another big slate on a Monday, which is nice. So, going to be a nice, fun day for GPPs. As you know, there's not going to be, like the 4 or 5 game slates. You get tons of guys that are really high owned. And while there will be a couple guys like that, certainly going to be a nice night to mix and match your players here. Talking position by position about some players who have injury concerns. That originally we saw Darren Williams questionable, but news just came out that he is going to play tonight. So it hurts Raymond Felton, a little bit, but this is a guy that was seeing big minutes to being productive anyway. So it kind of caps his ceiling, but I think he still has a pretty nice floor. Should still see 28 to 30 minutes in this one because aside from Darren Williams, he's been the most productive guard that they, or I should say point guard that they've had.
Yeah, I definitely agree with you there. And with Phoenix going small, they can shift over Wes Matthews over to the 3 and just play a smaller game. And, they look at where they've been the most productive. It's with Williams at the 1 and Felton at the 2 lately. So I think that's just going to be more of what's coming tonight. So definitely probably hits around that 30-minute mark, hopefully. I doubt we see anything over 35, though.
Yeah, and Wes Matthews, we'll get to him in a minute, but he makes for a really nice play here as well. Other injury concerns at point guard, Emmanuel Mudiay is officially out for tonight against Houston. So that means we got Jameer Nelson, another one of these aging guys that's going to be stepping into a bigger role. Great game against Minnesota last time out, 26-7, 38 FanDuel points. So this is a guy who should be seeing, mid-30s in minutes. Remains to be seen how many games he can do that for. He is getting up there in years. But, kind of by default, he's going to be the guy that runs the offense. And he certainly has significant upside at his price. $4,200, especially on FanDuel, where, he could definitely see 35 minutes. And, wouldn't be surprised to see him upwards of 30 fantasy points again.
Yeah, definitely probably my favorite value play tonight. I think it's just an easy plug and play for his value. And a great matchup because Houston just doesn't play defense at all.
Yeah, absolutely. And then Tyler Johnson's out. That doesn't really change much as far as point guards go. I don't really want much to do with Miami's guard situation anyway, so that doesn't really change anything. But those are the best values, of course. And then we're talking if we're paying up. All right, we'll ask you, and then I'll give you my take. If you're paying up for someone, so we'll say $8K plus. Doesn't matter. DraftKings, FanDuel, whatever. If you're paying up for 1 point guard today, who you got?
It's got to be Damian Lillard. Just in a matchup against New Orleans, as good as John Wall's been, but now he's priced pretty high. He's 9,700 on DK. Memphis is still, it's not a bad matchup because they haven't been good defensively, but Lillard for a whole $1,000 cheaper with massive upside, I just think he's the guy.
Yeah, I like that. And of course, like you said, you can't argue with John Wall, but it is individual tough matchup against Mike Conley, things like that. So I'm with you on Lillard. I think he's a good play. And then a guy that I really like a lot isn't quite to the 8K range, so I don't know why I said 8K if the guy I like is below it. But Brandon Knight's a guy that I like a lot tonight too. He's 76 and 77 on the 2 sites. And as you know, he's a guy with huge upside. And none of these Dallas guards, aside from Wes Matthews, who he's really not going to see much of, none of them are very good defenders at all. So one of the two, as we know many times, Brandon Knight, Eric Bledsoe, one of the two, usually in line to have a good night. We've seen both have big nights at the same time. And Brandon Knight, quite a bit cheaper. So I'm going to be rolling with him a little bit more than I will Bledsoe tonight.
Yeah, I definitely like that call.
All right, shooting guard. I'm not going to ask you who you'd be paying up for here because it's obvious. It's James Harden. Monster numbers, averaging, I believe it was 56.75 DraftKings points over the last 2 seasons against Denver. Had some huge games last year, a couple of nice games here this year as well. So if you're paying up, shooting guard, obviously, as it usually is, James Harden's your guy. Talking about a couple guys who are going to take on a little bit bigger of roles. You got Brad Beal, who's out with the same injury to his leg. He's had, years and years now. It's not a good situation for him. But then you've got guys that are going to step into a little bit bigger of a role. You've got Gary Neal, who's seen bigger minutes in the low to mid-20s, but just has not been productive. He's very scoring dependent, not a guy that you like much. Garrett Temple, though, the guy that 28 minutes each of the last 2 games on a point per minute basis, not extremely productive. But if you factor in his salary, he's been an okay filler. But just not a guy that I'm going out of my way to play here against Memphis.
Yeah, I definitely agree with you there. I just think with Felton and Jameer Nelson, being the better guard plays, there's really no need to go to Washington for value. If anything, I like Otto Porter in GPPs. He gets the biggest bump with Beal out right now.
Yeah, another guy to consider here. We're talking minutes here. Guy who's played at least 35 in 4 straight, and at least 31 in all of his last 10. Kentavious Caldwell-Pope coming off of a really big game last time out, 18, 7, and 8 against Indiana. Now facing off against a Clippers team that, as we know, struggles to defend wing players. And you're certainly not chasing that big game. His ownership will probably be higher than we'd like it to be today because of that big game. But he's a guy that's, he's always locked into those big minutes. He plays 36, 37, 38 minutes usually in a close game. He's a good defender. And, individual matchups, he's going to see some Jamal Crawford, J.J. Redick, all these guys. And there's not a whole lot really to be concerned about with those guys because he does give you a high floor here. So I think he's a fine play tonight that if you're not going to play Wesley Matthews, who I love as well, he's a nice pivot off of him.
Yeah, I definitely agree with you there. He's had 3+ steals in the last 5 games. So, he's been doing it defensively and, grabbing rebounds. And I don't think we'll see 8 assists again anytime soon, but he definitely does have a decent floor in this matchup.
Yeah, absolutely. And then as we're talking about some other guys, not a lot to love down cheap, but a guy that you had mentioned before the show when we were talking, guy who's been playing, you look at his last couple minutes, 25, 34, 28, 27, Alan Krabby, a guy who mostly scoring dependent, yes, but does have 7 straight games with at least 11 real points. So if you need a guy as a filler, it's going to play upper 20s in minutes for your cash games or your GPPs, you feel okay about him because he's a guy who's taking a decent amount of shots. And he's playing upper 20s in minutes. So if he can get some peripheral stats, he could fill up the stat sheet pretty nicely for you.
Yeah, I do like him shooting 56% in the last 6 games. So, yeah, he's scoring dependent, but he's been actually shooting the ball very well. And, of course, New Orleans probably arguably the worst defense in the league. It's hard to tell, but they're pretty bad.
Yeah, certainly one of the worst, if not the worst. And as you're speaking about those guys, another guy you can consider, of course, is C.J. McCollum. Price starting to get up there. Seems more of a cash game, like high-end cash game play than GPP play because at his price, just not a whole lot of upside, really. But definitely a guy you can usually expect a rock-solid type of 25-point floor there.
Yeah, I definitely agree with you there. And he's been showing a little bit of upside lately, but I still think he's better suited for cash games.
Yeah, completely agree. Small forward options here. Of course, they said DeMarre Carroll's going to travel, not likely to play on this trip, so he's the main concern there. Tobias Harris was questionable. Now word coming out that he's going to play tonight. Also, got Rondae Hollis-Jefferson, who's out as well. Not a whole lot changing there. You got Bojan Bogdanovic, who's been picking up some minutes there, but he's actually been pretty good. Last couple games, 39 minutes, 33, 38, 26, 17, and 30 fantasy points. So at $3,900 on FanDuel, he's not a bad guy to slot in there. He's going to see, 30-plus minutes in this one, and he's going to have ample opportunity to pay off, what's barely a minimum price salary.
Yeah, I definitely agree with you there. If you do have him, don't watch the game because he does go in the corner and stand around a lot, so that is frustrating to watch with him. But for his price on FanDuel, I think he's a solid value play.
Yeah, another value play now in the starting lineup as Memphis is trying to adapt. I don't know if they're trying to compete with the Warriors. Good luck with that. But they're going small ball now. Zach Randolph to the bench. Matt Barnes in the starting lineup. Really cheap on both sites. Obviously, you're going to see people chasing that last big game. 37 FanDuel points, 42 I believe it was on DraftKings in 37 minutes against Miami. But at his price, he's almost a must-play in cash. Starting here against the Washington team that, as we know, not a great defensive team. They've struggled against the 3 and really the 4 this year. And Matt Barnes, if he's going to be locked in the mid-30s in minutes, he's a steal at this price.
Yeah, you really feel good about guys in that range because Barnes, he's your best option. You guys got like Jared Dudley, Corey Brewer, Jeff Green in that range. Green's coming off a good game, but really hasn't been great over the last week or so.
Yeah, absolutely. And then if you're paying up at small forward, I'll put you on the spot again. If you're paying up, I guess dollar per dollar, say you have to get a guy, we'll go $7K or above. Who do you like?
That's tough. I got to go with Kawhi. I just think, the guy's consistent. I don't think Utah's been great defensively since Gobert's gone down. I just think they've just been good enough to keep guys off the radar there. But Kawhi's probably my favorite play.
Yeah,
but
I
Paul
like
George
that.
is tough too.
Yeah, of course. And then, I mean, Spurs game lowest total of the night, but the good thing about Kawhi is he's not scoring dependent to put up points. He can get steals, blocks, assists, rebounds. The guy does it all. So I like that. Like you said with Paul George, I mean, he has had a couple down games recently, coming off of 2 huge games before that, but 3 of his last 5 games have been kind of disappointing on a per dollar basis. But certainly a guy that, recency bias always plays into these things big. We got 10 games on the slate tonight, so Paul George might be a sneaky GPP play while everyone's paying up for Harden and Davis.
Yeah, and with no Carroll, that gives him a bump as well because Carroll's pretty good defensively.
Yeah, that's a good point. Paul George definitely a guy with some big upside. Another guy that's interesting for GPPs is Danilo Gallinari. Has those random big games, but showing some more consistency recently. As you look at his last 10 games, his worst one, 22 fantasy points. So obviously you'd like a floor, closer to the 28 to 30 point range, but does have the upside. I mean, it's had a couple games upwards of 40, if not over 40 in the last 10 games as well. And as we know, Houston, they just don't care on defense. Obviously, Trevor Ariza is a pretty good defender, but he's not completely healthy either, so I'm not too worried about that. But I think I would still rather have a guy like Otto Porter, who, with Bradley Beal out, taking on, like you mentioned earlier, a big-time usage bump.
Yeah, I definitely like those two. I think those are great mid-range plays. Gallinari's averaged 25, 3 and 4 against Houston in 2 games, shot 58% in those two. So clearly, I mean, just from those numbers alone, Houston does not play defense. We've seen it much this season.
No, they certainly don't. Speaking of some guys that are in good spots here, power forward, pretty top-heavy here tonight as far as power forwards go. Anthony Davis against Portland, 10,700 and 10,600 on the 2 sites. Had a good game against him last time. Not quite an Anthony Davis good game. And it's another one of those guys who granted, if you're disappointed by 22, 13, 2, and 4, and 1 like he had in his last game, you kind of are. I mean, 46.6 fantasy points is good, but for an almost $11,000 player, you want 55 to 60, ideally. I mean, you want at least 50, but not a bad play. But certainly he has a nice high floor in games that are competitive where he plays big minutes. I mean, really, aside from that Clippers game where he only played 28 minutes, it wasn't that close of a game. He's had himself a nice floor. You have 4 games of 52 or more, 50 or more on FanDuel in his last 10. So he certainly has the upside in the floor, probably the highest upside of any player tonight, because you think of the individual matchups he's going to see down low against Portland, and it's not pretty on the Portland end.
Yeah, I mean, that front court, I mean, you really want to target against him, and Anthony Davis is the guy to do it. Yeah, he's had some bum games, I guess you could say, this season, but I mean, still, he's out of the power forwards. He has the greatest matchup and the most upside for sure.
Yeah, and then not far behind him points-wise, but pretty far behind him actually dollar-wise, Blake Griffin. You mentioned he had a monster game against Detroit earlier this season. We know he has a huge upside. It just almost seems like you're paying for the floor with Griffin, and you hope the game stays close, and he needs to make plays late in the fourth because he certainly could put up full stat lines. I mean, borderline triple-double numbers when he gets it going. But you could pay for the nice high floor with Blake Griffin, and that duo right there, with all the value that's out there, it's not hard to get a duo like Griffin and Anthony Davis in your cash games or your tournament lineups either.
Yeah, I definitely like that just because I feel like they're the 2 best options. I know we both like Thad Young as well tonight, but I mean, Griffin, Davis, I think that's an easy 2 to plug into your lineups with so much value, especially at the guard spot.
Yeah, and another guy that I want to love, we keep talking about it, but this is a perfect podcast to talk about him on because he plays low 30s in minutes, 31, 33, 33 in his last 3. 13-point spread here, so he's a great tournament option because on a point per minute basis, I mean, he's been a top 5 player in the NBA this year. Pau Gasol, really expensive on FanDuel, which is just going to keep his ownership even lower in GPPs, especially with that blowout potential against Philly. But I mean, you're not going to find a better matchup, and he's center eligible, a little bit cheaper on DraftKings. You'll probably see more people on him there with the double-double bonus as well. But he's a guy that I like a lot in tournaments tonight because the Bulls just haven't been a great team. And while they are 13-point favorites, I don't doubt they could win this and probably should win this game by 13 points. They haven't looked like the team that's capable of blowing out many teams recently. So I just think that Pau Gasol is going to be a guy that goes underowned, and I definitely want to take advantage of that tonight.
Yeah, I mean, you look at the game against Philly, he only played 29 minutes earlier this season against them, went 16-9 with 6 blocks, so channeling his inner Hassan Whiteside, I guess, that game. But I mean, the guy's been really consistent lately, and he has seen a bit of a minutes bump, which was always the concern earlier this year, but he's been one of my favorite plays for the past week or so. And I mean, at his price on DK, I think it's really hard to get away from him.
Yeah, and then another nice tournament play that once again is kind of toying with us, looking like he's a cash game play again, but you never really want to trust him in cash games. Ersan Ilyasova, coming off of some strange games recently where 15-13 game, then a 7-7 game with 3 assists, 3 blocks, 15-8, 20-5. The guy is all over the map all the time. We've even seen him just randomly play small minutes. So his minutes inconsistent, his production inconsistent. Coming off a couple games recently, still not a guy I'll play in cash games, especially with so much value out there. But certainly a guy that I'll throw in a couple tournaments and see what happens tonight.
Yeah, I mean, he's got great upside for his price. He's been really consistent, but Ersan Ilyasova and the word consistent usually don't go together. So still, I would avoid in cash games definitely, but tournaments, I think he's a great play.
Yeah, another one of those guys you put in your lineup and you watch the other games because
Yes.
he's terrible to watch. But I mean, it's so frustrating because you'll see him stand out there for 10-minute stretches and not even touch the ball. I mean, it's bad at times, but he can certainly fill it up in a hurry as we saw in the last couple games. But other thing is, I mean, I think he had 20 fantasy points in the first quarter of a game last week, and then ended up with 26, I believe. So he's certainly a guy that's very volatile, but that's the perfect storm for GPP. Moving over to center now. Obviously, Andre Drummond is in a good spot against the Clippers, a team that doesn't rebound well. DeAndre Jordan made a point to say he wants to start rebounding better, et cetera, et cetera. But I mean, it's not really been his fault. I mean, you look at his numbers recently, and he's been incredibly consistent on the boards. It's just kind of, maybe that was a little subtle hint at Blake Griffin, like, hey, Blake, you're one of the best athletes in the world. Rebound the ball more. But either way, Drummond, DeAndre Jordan, take your pick with those two guys. They've gone at each other before, had big games. I like both guys tonight, and I think that paying up at center might be a nice contrarian move tonight. I think a lot of people will be paying up elsewhere.
Yeah, I definitely agree with you there. I think Drummond really has a really high ceiling, obviously a high floor too, but people just rather pay for Harden and pay for guys like Paul George or Anthony Davis. So I think superstar-wise, I mean, Drummond's maybe not on that level yet. I mean, I guess you could argue, but he's definitely going to be the lower-owned superstar play. Yeah,
absolutely. And, I mean, I love targeting big rebound guys like this who can fill up the points in a hurry with even without scoring actual points like DeAndre Jordan. So we did see DeAndre Jordan 10 and 16 in that first game. So I think he's probably the sneakier guy because you see people in tournaments, they just flock to DeAndre Jordan because he has that monster upside. But we've seen it from Jordan as well. So definitely not a bad way to go there. Elsewhere at center, you've got some cheaper options. Marcin Gortat in a tough matchup against Marc Gasol individually, but he's been consistent. And you see when the Wizards have success, it's when he and John Wall working well together. And, they feed off each other really well. And I still like him tonight in cash games, really any format. But the pivot off of him is the guy that you and I were both talking about here, Jahlil Okafor. He's been, I mean, you don't worry about what he's doing off the court. On the court, he's been incredible recently. 22, 22, and 23 real points in his last 3 games. 2 of those double-doubles. So he's a guy with some big-time upside, but just be forewarned that he also has a pretty low floor as well.
Yeah, it definitely does. I mean, guy's a high usage guy too. He shot the ball 25 times last game, 18 and 15 the games before. So he's going to go and get his. And I mean, I'm not really worried about blowout concern. I just don't think Chicago's been that dominant of a team. So I think this one stays pretty close. And either way, I think Okafor still plays his minutes just being so young.
Yeah, definitely like that call there a lot. And then as far as other guys, I mean, there's not a whole lot to love. Indiana has not been good down low. Bismack Biyombo's an okay guy on FanDuel. I wouldn't pay almost $5K for him on DraftKings, but if you want to throw him in there on FanDuel, if you're punting, he's not a bad option. But I'm not in love with him. I think I'd probably rather have pay a little bit more and have a guy like Joakim Noah who doesn't need to have very many minutes to be productive. I mean, on a per minute basis. I mean, well, you all know that I love Joakim Noah though.
Yeah, definitely. Yeah, he's a great play tonight. I mean, he's a guy who's just going to go out there and get you 25-plus fantasy points each night.
Yeah, absolutely. And I mean, it's certainly a good matchup. But much like Pau Gasol, it's certainly a blowout concern there. But either way, that'll wrap things up here for us for the Minutes to Win It podcast. Find us on Twitter at DF Cafe. Subscribe to our YouTube channel and check out the rest of our great content at dailyfantasycafe.com.